A shadow moved in the doorway. Kayla gasped, her heart pounding. She reached for her father's arm, but he didn't flinch. He stepped forward, his eyes narrowing, his hand on the door. Then, without warning, the figure lunged from the doorway, slamming the door open with an unnerving force. A tall, gaunt man stood before them, his eyes sunken and hollow, his face pale, his clothes ragged. The man's lips parted, revealing yellow teeth, but no words came out. Kayla froze. This wasn't a man. This was something else. The figure stepped forward, but before Kayla could react, the old man's voice echoed through her mind. The town's curse isn't just in the storm. It's in the people. Her skin went cold. The figures they had seen, the whispers, they were all part of it. This wasn't just a snowstorm. It was the curse, closing in. Marcus grabbed Kayla's hand, pulling her back. We need to get inside. But as the door swung open further, the man, if it could still be called that, let out a low, guttural growl, a sound that sent chills down their spines. Get inside. Kayla shouted, her voice raw with fear. They bolted through the door, slamming it behind them, only to find the church not as they had imagined. It was dark. Cold. But it wasn't empty. The pews were lined with figures, their heads bent low, eyes hidden in shadow. Kayla's heart raced as she stepped back, almost tripping over the worn wooden floor. Something was wrong, something beyond the curse. There was no way out now. The church was still and silent, the air thick with an unseen tension that seemed to weigh heavily on Kayla's chest. She could feel the eyes of the figures in the pews watching her, but when she tried to look at them, their faces remained hidden in shadow, their bodies motionless. A low hum filled the air, as if the building itself was alive with some ancient, unspoken knowledge. Marcus stepped cautiously toward the altar, his hand tight on Kayla's arm. We need answers, and this is the only place left to find them, he muttered under his breath. The chill that had settled in Kayla's bones deepened. It wasn't just the cold, it was the sensation of something pulling at her, something old and powerful that seemed to resonate from the very walls of the church. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence. Welcome, it whispered. Kayla spun around, her pulse racing. The voice hadn't come from the figures in the pews. It had come from the altar. She and Marcus turned to face the man who had entered the church with them, the gaunt figure they had seen outside. But now, he was different. His features seemed sharper, more defined, as though the shadows had peeled away from him, revealing something more sinister. You're too late, the man said, his voice no longer a growl but something clearer, more calculated. You should have left when you had the chance. The storm is part of us. It's in the blood of this town. Kayla's throat went dry. What do you mean? What are you? The man's eyes gleamed with a sickly light. We are the ones who are bound to this place. To this curse. And now, you've uncovered the secret of the storm. The people of this town, they never leave. They cannot leave. It was a price paid long ago. What price? Marcus demanded, his voice hoarse. What happened here? The man's gaze shifted to the pews behind them, where the silent figures remained still, almost statue-like. There was a time when this town was full of life, full of laughter, and happiness. But a crime was committed, an unspeakable sin. The people here, they made a deal with the wrong forces. Kayla felt a sudden shift in the air. The storm outside seemed to intensify, the wind howling louder, and the sound of it seemed to distort, almost like a voice whispering in the distance. A strange chill filled the room, settling in her very bones. The price, the man continued, his voice growing darker, was the souls of those who had wronged the land. They were bound to it, doomed to live forever in torment. Trapped in the storm that never ends, trapped in the town that never dies. Why us? Kayla whispered, her voice trembling. Why bring us here? The man's lips curled into a smile, but it was an unsettling, almost predatory smile. You were never meant to be here. You should have stayed away. But now that you're here, there's no going back. The curse has seen you, felt your presence. And now it will claim you. Kayla's breath hitched. Her thoughts raced. No. They couldn't die here. Not like this. Behind her, a low murmur spread through the congregation of figures, a sound almost like a chant, but Kayla couldn't understand the words. The room seemed to darken further as they began to rise from their seats. There was no escaping this, no way out. No. Marcus shouted, pulling Kayla toward the door. We need to fight back. But the man blocked their way, his body shifting unnaturally fast, his movements almost inhuman. The room seemed to close in around them, the shadows thickening, swallowing them whole. You cannot escape, the man hissed. You are already part of the curse. Kayla's heart raced. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, as the shadows moved closer and closer. Her mind screamed at her to run, but the old man's warning echoed in her ears. Go to the church. That's where you'll find the answers. She looked around frantically, her eyes scanning for any possible way out. And then, as though some hidden force within her mind sparked to life, something inside Kayla clicked. She didn't know how, didn't know why, but she realized that the only way out wasn't just to run. She had to end it. She had to break the curse. The storm outside continued to rage, but within the church, time seemed to stand still. The figures in the pews now began to move, their bodies twisting unnaturally as if they were bound by invisible strings. Kayla could feel their cold, lifeless gaze upon her, their eyes hidden in shadow, but she felt their presence pressing against her, suffocating her thoughts. She tried to focus, to think clearly, but the fear was overwhelming. She had no weapon, no way of defending herself. The old man's cryptic warning lingered in her mind, the storm won't stop until it's claimed its toll. Kayla's thoughts whirled, a desperate urgency clawing at her chest. She couldn't let them take her and Marcus. They had to leave. They had to escape. But then, she saw it. Near the altar, a small chest sat, almost hidden in the shadows. It wasn't large, but it was enough to catch Kayla's eye. Her breath caught in her throat. It was that chest. She remembered the old man mentioning something about an artifact, a way to break the curse. Without a word, she pulled Marcus toward the chest, her heart pounding. She didn't know how, but she knew that whatever was inside that chest might be their only chance. As she reached for the chest, the figures in the pews let out a low, eerie moan. The storm's howling intensified. The air grew thicker, suffocating, as if the very walls of the church were closing in on them. Marcus grabbed her arm. Kayla, we need to get the chest. She cut him off, her voice a whisper of panic. She threw open the chest. Inside, a single object glinted in the dim light, an old, ornate book, its cover inscribed with strange, unreadable symbols. With trembling hands, Kayla grabbed the book, the weight of it pulling at her. The moment her fingers touched the pages, a surge of energy coursed through her, like an electric shock, and the room trembled violently. The storm outside reached a deafening crescendo. The wind screamed like 1,000 voices, the church shaking as though it were about to collapse. The figures in the pews surged forward, their limbs twisting grotesquely as they rushed toward Kayla and Marcus, their eyes burning with fury. But the book in Kayla's hands began to glow, the pages shimmering with a pale light. The symbols on the cover started to pulse, each one resonating with the power that surged through the room. She could feel the weight of it, a power that had been dormant for so long, a power that had to be unleashed. With a shout, she opened the book to the first page. As the wind howled around them, the church began to shift. The walls cracked and groaned. The storm outside raged with an almost supernatural force, but the light from the book grew brighter, more intense. The figures in the pews screamed, their voices rising in agony. Kayla could hear the old man's voice in her head now, a whisper urging her on. Destroy it. Destroy the curse. Her hands shook, but she knew what she had to do. She closed her eyes, focusing on the book, on the power it held. With one final breath, she read aloud the incantation she found written on the page. The room erupted in a flash of light. The storm outside began to abate, the wind slowing and the snow falling more gently. The dark presence in the church evaporated as the figures in the pews crumbled into dust. The oppressive weight of the curse lifted, leaving the room feeling lighter, almost peaceful. Kayla and Marcus stood there, breathing heavily, but no longer feeling the choking terror that had once gripped them. They looked around the church, which now seemed normal, just a simple building. The air felt fresher, and the light shining through the windows seemed brighter. The book in Kayla's hands began to lose its glow, and she closed it gently. It was over. The curse had been broken. Together, they walked out into the now quiet town. The storm had passed. The town that had been trapped for so long was free. But they knew one thing for certain, they would never forget what they had witnessed. And though the storm had ended, a new chapter of their lives had begun. As the town faded behind them, Kayla and Marcus stepped forward into the unknown, their bond stronger than ever. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed the chilling adventure and want to hear more spine-tingling tales, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Check out the videos appearing on your screen for more thrilling stories. Thanks for watching, and remember, the night holds many secrets.